Today's decision is a win for Canadians and for future generations.
Yes, the Saskatchewan Court of Appeals ruling 3-2 that a carbon tax is constitutional is a win for Canadians and their children. Yay, taxes for our children, said no one ever. Of course, there's a good chance Liberals will be voted out come October, so we won't have to deal with this Looney Tune minister and her repetitive, non-evidence-based fear-mongering party.
It cannot be free to pollute in Canada.
Canada cannot be free to pollute itself? What?
This decision confirms that putting a price on carbon pollution and returning the revenues to Canadians through the Climate Action Incentive Rebate is not only constitutional, it is an effective and essential part of any serious response to the global challenge of climate change.
Lady, the Saskatchewan court approved a carbon tax. That's all it did. How are Canadians suddenly polluting or using energy any differently now? Are you saying now that we have a carbon tax, we're no longer polluting? We've been heating our homes and cooking our food for over 100 years, and we will keep doing that. 1. Carbon dioxide is not pollution. You're literally telling every Canadian that burns fuel simply for heating their homes that they're polluting. Even if you're using green energy, you're still polluting. Solar panels don't grow off trees. Returning taxes back to Canadians is just backwards. You either tax us or you don't. The fact that Liberals are giving up to 90% of our taxes back is just... what's the point? It's like taxing me on $1 and giving me 90 cents back. Do they understand how taxes work? Does the 10% cover the charging costs? Like what? Yes, each province is getting taxed differently and getting money back differently. But here's an idea. Why not just tax us really low so you don't have to give us any money back? What the hell kind of a tax scheme is this? And thirdly, if they wanted a serious tax about how people consume things, what you do is one of two things. You have a revenue-neutral carbon tax, which we don't have, or 2, we have a consumption tax. Then you can properly and ethically explain to Canadians how taxes work. Now, you're still going to have to sell it to them, but that's how you would do it. Saying low-income households are getting more money back because taxes aren't as high for them and the rebates are going to be higher is just a weird redistributionist scheme, and it's just pointless. It doesn't address anything to do with the environment.
The court also recognized, as do most Canadians, that climate change is man-made.
We don't need a court of appeals to tell us what words mean, but apparently we need to teach our environmental minister that climate change occurs naturally as well as anthropogenically. And of course, climate is really just human behavior. I mean, that's all it is. We're just bad humans. We're so bad, but our enlightened, ethically minded Liberal Party will save the day with taxes and 90% rebates, which will solve carbon dioxide, whatever.
And one of the great existential issues of our time.
I'm quite sure there's no philosophy of existentialism that deals with climate change. Kierkegaard or Sartre didn't write anything about that. Carbon dioxide is plant food. It's part of the carbon cycle. It's not only good for the environment, it's necessary. Flooding and fires and earthquakes and tornadoes and massive rain and snowstorms, those are going to keep going on. Yes, the surface temperature of the planet is roughly 9/10 of a degree Celsius warmer than it was 100 years ago. But there is no correlation between what is happening today and what Canadians can do with carbon dioxide taxes to have any real impact for generations to come.
We are witnessing Canadians across the country hurting from the impacts of climate change.
CO2 sits in the atmosphere for hundreds of years. It's not a very potent greenhouse gas, and it takes up fractions and fractions of a percent of what's actually up there. Now, if you want to talk water vapor or methane, which is 30 times more potent than CO2, or nitrous oxide, which is 300 times more potent and depletes ozone, and how to improve crop growth, sure, we can have that discussion. But taxes aren't going to stop flash flooding in Quebec or wildfires in British Columbia. And in a cost-benefit analysis, CO2 has way more obvious positives and only perceived or even implied negatives, some of those negatives being next to nothing. Canadians are suffering due to nature, as they always have, as all humans have, not because we like gasoline.
It is time for Conservative politicians to stop the partisan games and join in on serious and effective climate action.
McKenna right now is generally referring to the current flooding in Canada. This has been going on since Canada's inception. This has more to do with urban and rural planning and expansion, more than it has to do with yearly rainfall. Yes, the floods are getting bigger and in more frequency. Just recently, the Ottawa River has flooded and is now receding. That always happens. But there's no correlation between this and climate change. And I really don't like how politicians or media types just blame everything on climate change. And of course, implying anthropomorphic climate change or Canadian-blamed climate change, as if a carbon tax and us decreasing our output of carbon is going to fix things next year. It's not. There is no solution.
My questions to Conservative politicians, from Doug Ford to Scott Moe to Jason Kenney to Andrew Scheer. Will you stop blocking climate action and join us in fighting climate change?
All right, so when are we getting a revenue-neutral carbon tax or a consumption tax on carbon? If a tax is your serious and effective climate action, or actually explaining how a tax is going to impact climate change at all, what is the solution? What is the Liberal Party solution? Giving millions of dollars to Loblaws for buying energy-efficient freezers? Tell us, Liberals, what should we be doing aside from your nonsensical redistributional tax? Seriously, what's the answer? Because I don't see one. I think every Canadian wants to stop bad things from happening, especially to the environment. I think most people would agree with that. No one likes pollution. But until the Ministry of the Environment or science tells us what to do with actual proof that X action will have X actual impact, I mean, we don't have that yet. We'd be happy to argue those points when they come out, too, because we'd like to know what to do. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. And they have, a few months left till the federal election? And I bet summer is going to be like oh so hysterically hot. They're going to be screaming up and down over and over again about it. Taxing us without actually targeting a consumption on energy or a type of fuel isn't going to work. People in British Columbia really don't like the jump in gas prices, and that's because of the Liberal government. They're just taxing us and then giving money back to rich people in Ontario. I don't even own a car, and I'm getting a rebate from the government, a nice big one. How is that doing anything for the poor or the environment? It's nothing more than redistribution, which is giving money to the rich.
Thank you to our litigation team and to intervenors, from doctors to farmers to economists to Indigenous peoples to the province of British Columbia and to young people.
Yes, thank you, everyone who don't know what they're talking about, you ignorant mass of gullible, useful idiots. I'm glad you're feeling better about yourself, about doing something without actually knowing what you're doing and literally doing nothing. Please tell me the actual health risks of anything from 350 to 1,000 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, because I'm just not seeing it. Now, did you know we exhale 35 to 50,000 parts per million CO2 on each breath? Yeah, haven't passed out yet, still breathing. Please explain how CO2 is a pollutant when it's a fundamental component of life. Please explain how increasing CO2 in the atmosphere is a bad thing when it's only giving us positive results and revitalizing areas like the deserts of the planet. And would you kindly please look at non-fuel-based or non-consumption solutions, like how to stop the production of methane from invasive termites or livestock or the wetlands. Let's have those discussions and stop trying to tax Canadians
who stood with us in court to take serious climate action.
Making the case for imposing a carbon tax or carbon dioxide tax on the country is not serious climate action. It could be any tax, and any province could be challenging it, and you're still fighting for a tax on constitutional grounds, not necessarily a climate action environmental one. A carbon tax that is not revenue neutral is not a climate action. It's just a tax. It is even sillier if you give out 90% of the proceeds of the money back. You're wasting everyone's time. That's redistribution. That's not helping anyone and only creates a pointless bureaucracy for collecting and handing out money while charging a 10% fee and making the rich richer.
We'll continue to move forward with all Canadians to tackle climate change, grow a clean economy, and create good middle-class jobs.
The Liberal Party does not represent all Canadians. I hate this generalized statement that a political party thinks because they have an agenda, the entire country supports them in it. 5 provinces are going to appeal to the Supreme Court over this nonsensical tax. She better have her arguments ready, because the 2 of the 3 judges who voted no in Saskatchewan, those were really good grounds for appeal, or else these other provinces wouldn't have bothered if they think they wouldn't win. We'll see you in court, Miss Environmental Minister, but come October, we might not even need to.